How do you price your products or services, especially under inflationary times? How do you raise them, and how much is necessary? I'm Jamie.
I'm Mark.
And we're Social Sudo. All right, so Mark, I was thinking about this a lot lately in my own business and some of my friends' businesses. Thinking about pricing, and like I said in the intro, with the amount of inflation that's going on right now, salaries are going up, costs of goods are going up. When is it an appropriate time to pass that off to the consumer? Or maybe let's even take a step back from that. And can you just kind of talk to me about how you think about pricing products and services in the first place?
Yeah, I think the current economic climate is an excellent time to really talk about foresight and hindsight. I think when you do create a company and you are pricing your products and services, it's very important to be strategic just about how you want to price out your products. The first step is to really be quantitative about it. You really want to understand what your operating costs are, what it costs to assemble, cost of goods sold, any of the parts that are used wholesale, and then combine them. And then you need to make sure that your profit margin is adequate for you to both make a living and continue operations in the company. And it's very important to just mention, if you were forward looking, that it is way more difficult to raise prices than it is to lower prices. So you want to keep that in mind when you're pricing your products, just so that down the road you have a little bit more leeway or time to acquire a customer base before you increase your products. So I think that that's sort of first step when you consider pricing. The next thing I just want to briefly touch on is something that is commonly referred to, and most people know as the Goldilocks effect, which is, and the best example is really, well, airlines or bottles of wine. If you go into a wine store, you see an $8 bottle of wine, then you see a $15 bottle of wine, and then you have a $100 bottle of wine. There's one that is, cheap, then there's one that's just kind of right, and then there's one that's a premium and exorbitant that intends to capture a premium market. It's very important to sort of capture that effect because it plays into consumer behavior. And at the same time, what you would also want to do when you price your subjects is perhaps if you don't want to just sort of have 3 tiers of pricing, you can then offer or tack on services that you can then charge a premium for or then earn more capital for your time if you were to run it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is if you're going to set your prices or if you're in the process of thinking about raising them, to almost overshoot it because it's easier to correct downwards rather than undershoot it and then have to correct upwards. Did I get that right, or do you think it is possible to kind of hit that optimal zone right out of the gate?
The important thing to remember when you're starting to price your products and services from the early days is that you don't have a huge customer base. And as you're trying to acquire customers over the years or 2 years, you might start to develop a sort of a clientele that's either going to be receptive to a price increase or not receptive to a price increase. And you have to think about how you value your own products and services. And 9 times out of 10 in this environment, it's very important to make sure that you do not only charge a premium for your product, but you're also delivering a premium product to the client. It's very, very important. If the customer is going to be purchasing something from you, it's because you have something that is valuable to them. And you need to price it as such. So there are a lot of ways to price different products. And most companies that come in, they take an investment, their objective is to scale quite quickly. So basically, it's really high volume, really low margin type sales. And that's just not realistic from a ma and pop or a bootstrap type of company that tries to scale on their own. What you have to do is price your product a bit higher, have a higher margin, and understand that you're going to have a low volume, high margin type company. And then you need to fill in the gap with exceptional service if that's the route that you choose to take. And to be honest, that's probably the route that many of our listeners are going to be taking as well. Your customers and you will know if you're charging too much. If you are more expensive and you're not delivering a quality product, your customers won't come to you. It's that simple. So I think that's the first thing to really understand about when you, like, step one, pricing your products.
And let me pause you there. So I think that's the fear of every small business owner is that scenario where, you think you're delivering a high quality product, and maybe you are, but you raise prices and you're afraid that too many people are going to go away. And let's say you're no longer in this startup phase. If you're talking about raising prices, rather setting up prices, you've got employees, you've got now bills to pay, and you're going to make the leap of raising prices and hopefully not destroy demand. Do you think it's as simple as, well, it's pretty easy to just lower prices again? Or do you think there should be a different strategy in the way of maybe setting up higher demand first through marketing, or maybe have a plan B where, okay, if I destroy demand, then I've got to hit the marketing more, or if I've got to start looking at my business and worry about what kind of quality issue occurred. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's where you start walking a line kind of between fiction and reality. I mean, when you start a company, most people are looking for cheaper, better, faster. They're creating a company because they found a problem with a product that they currently have. So in essence, if you started that company, it's not just because you want to become an entrepreneur. It's because you found a better way to do something, and therefore chances are you are delivering quality. So it makes sense that most startups and young companies are going to be priced a little bit more niche in that sort of vein. Where I say fiction is that a lot of times when you see businesses that are trying to save money, it's sort of inverse. And I think that this is further from the truth than most, which is where basically big businesses or restaurants that have a huge overhead, a lot of employees, a lot of costs, try to then skimp on the ingredients that they're using in their product. They try to get cheap ingredients, and then the quality of the product starts to diminish. That can happen in reality, but I think that most committed management teams that are out to deliver a quality product are not focused on that type of an approach. In most cases, it's far better to raise your prices at that point if you realize that your costs are higher than expected or increasing over time. And the reality is let's just take the environment that we are in today. It's a very inflationary time. Prices are going up across the board. There's a couple things to remember. Again, it's always good to ground yourself and go back to a quantitative sort of approach. Understand what your cost increases are and how much it's costing you, and what your operating costs are, and then factor in an appropriate margin for your time, your quality of service, and so forth. Start there, and then it's not going to be so difficult to increase your prices. Now, it's a little bit kind of a fine line when you do that, because 2 years ago, when the market was really good, the economy was really strong, chances are you were turning away customers because you couldn't handle the volume, or you just couldn't supply a product. So raising prices in that type of environment is much simpler. Now, the real problem today is, let's say your customers have decreased. You have much fewer customers. You're finding your customers are choosing other products and services. The competitive landscape is much more competitive. And now all of a sudden you need to raise prices to stay in business. And you're scared that raising prices is going to sort of flush out some primary, principal, very important customers. The best thing to do in that situation is to do what we're actually seeing, is to be completely transparent. You need to tell and communicate with your clients that the reality of the situation is you have to raise costs because you have to compete in the environment to stay in business. But along with that needs to come a promise that you continue to deliver quality, one that basically says, here's the reason why you're going with my product or service. It's very, very important to at least uphold that level of commitment to your client. Because the reality is, at the end of the day, it is not the price that is controlling whether or not customers are coming to you, it's the product. if you have a good product that is competitive, customers will come to you every time, every price increase down the road. But again, you don't want to screw your customers. Customers will know if you're charging way too much for a product. You need to price yourself competitively against your competition. And you also need to understand that your product or your service is delivering a better quality than the competition. And those are just really the two main important things to remember. If you start to see some customers leave, then you need to make a change, and chances are it's not lower your price, it's you need to step up the quality of your product and service.
Yeah, and I think those are all great points, and a lot of this sounds like stuff I would have guessed at, and one of the things that I think is a bit more specific to the service industry that I'm thinking of is like types of businesses that, you know, you Google and basically all sound the same, right? Like different products are kind of a different story. You know, you're selling a macropod. There, you know, you can look at a spec list and see the difference between, you know, your product versus other products that are on the market. And you go, okay, this one is a higher quality. I'll pay a premium for this. You know, in my business, physical therapy, or like, you know, a friend's business, which is flooring, you know, sometimes you Google those, and for a lay person to kind of understand what the difference is, even if we are, you know, delivering a higher quality service, might not be completely obvious to a customer. And then, you know, I guess some of that fear of, okay, what if we raise prices? You know, does that eliminate the people even attempting to come in? And then again, I kind of go back to marketing, that, you know, is it a matter of just kind of trying to be as transparent with the public as possible about like, what is your service? Why is it higher quality? Why should you pay more for this? Go ahead and comment on that.
I think that for anybody that's struggling right now and needs to raise prices, I think, and at least what I try to do for myself is I'm actually not raising prices. I'm keeping them down as low as possible. And what I'm trying to do is work overtime in order to acquire more business, so that my margins can basically stay high by increasing the number of sales I'm having per month or per year or so forth. Now, I think the two most important aspects of running a business and is really, truly understanding your market. Everybody that's in a different type of industry, whether it be healthcare, whether it be the restaurant industry, whether it be technology, understanding the market is the first step to running a business. If you understand how your market will react, what your market is paying, who the competitors are, then you're in a good spot. And I think really at the end of the day, the two main important things that you need to keep in mind are to keep yourself honest. You need to stay incredibly honest with you and maintain a level of integrity between you and your client, especially in a business like mine, which is really driven by customer referral. That is how I built my business. I built my business on strong communication and great customer satisfaction, so that my buyers at the end of the day leave happy, leave feeling like maybe my product delivered something like they would have opened up on Christmas morning. They have a great experience, they get great use out of their system, and therefore they refer a colleague or a friend. And that is sort of the foundation at which I built my business on. And I think that that's a good way to do it, at least for bootstrappers and at least for me, because while I'm not going to scale immensely, it's a very slow approach. What it does do is it forms a really strong pillar underneath you that can then expand and grow, and there's not a lot of negativity that can bring it down. So the second thing beyond integrity and honesty, I think, is then communication. It is so important to constantly communicate with your clients through some sort of a technological platform, whether it be social media, email, some sort of a forum on your website, just to understand that your customers are not only were happy, but continue to be happy to this day, and just let them know that you are there for them, and if anything goes wrong, you solve it and fix it in a way that is going to be satisfactory to them. So like, I don't want to go into too many gritty details about my company specifically and how I try to manage all of those. Those strategies I like to sort of keep to myself, but at the end of the day, it really revolves around customer satisfaction, making sure that I delivered a solution to a problem and that the customer remains happy when something breaks, when they need help, when they have a new application, and so forth. And I think as long as you take that approach, again, it's more of a long-term approach, but it's more difficult to fail, I think, in that respect. And if you have to raise or lower prices, the reality is you're building a loyalty around your brand that just other businesses can't compete with if they are taking advantage of their customers in a different way. They're not offering the same level of customer service. They're not there for them. It's very important to just work, do some hard work, and outcompete. And I think that pricing is not on the forefront of people's minds as long as you're doing that.
Yeah, good point. I think a takeaway that I got from that is like, you kind of think about it more as communication rather than marketing, right? It's more about being, transparent with your customer base, communicating with them, and less like trying to sell them on something. At least the mindset that I see that.
For my own sake, if I'm purchasing any type of product and I feel like the person is not being honest, they're not being transparent about what their costs are, they're not letting me know these little details, then I will not want to work with them. But if somebody came along and they charged me twice as much and they justified why they charged me twice as much and they told me exactly why and they told me that the quality of the work was going to be really good and they had past examples to sort of validate that, then I'll always pay more for the guy that's honest and for the guy that is doing quality work. I think that's one of the benefits of, I think, free markets and capitalism. You generally you get what you pay for, and I think the market generally understands that the cheapest product probably is not the product you want to be buying or using or deploying. So there's a lot to be said for charging the right price for a quality product. That's what you have to keep in mind at the end of the day. Is your product better than the rest? And that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur, I think.